Good morning and welcome to Iyun with Benzion, part of the broader Yeshiva YouTube 40 shirim a week. We're analyzing today Daf Chav Zayin and Kesubos, number 27. The Gemara seems to give a final psak halacha and just clarify some points about a shvuya. That's what we've been talking about the last couple of dapim, about a woman who's taken into captivity, and we assume, as opposed to someone who's put in jail, if she's put in jail, it depends whether she's put in jail for monetary reasons or for capital punishment. If it's capital punishment, we assume she's violated even Baraton Jasar to her husband in Israel. If it's monetary reasons, it depends. It depends whether it's a Jewish state or it depends on a non-Jewish state. It's a Jewish state in jail, so she is considered mutaris even for her husband's a Kohen. If it's a monetary claim, but it's a non-Jewish state, we assume in jail she's violated at least the Yasser to the Kohen, maybe also to her husband. However, when you're shvuya, when you're taken into captivity, a ransom, right, or like the Gemara says, a city was conquered by non-Jews, and all the women and children and men were taken into captivity, not a formal jail, where there's hefkerus in jail. Do we assume? So the general rule is that Chazal were machmer, and they said there's a chashash. A chashash means there's a suffix. Now, I want to clarify, when we say there's a suffix, it doesn't mean 50% one way, 50% the other way. Because if I have 50% one way and 50% the other way, the Torah says you go the kula. You go the kula in that case. Because why do we assume the chazaka is something's mutter? How could you come to asar it? However, when we have a chashash, which something passes the threshold of just being a regular 50% doubt, meaning I would say 65%, right? If you've gone to school, you know that the percentage 60% is very meaningful. Below that, you fail. You fail to prove any doubt. There's no doubt over there. When is there doubt? When is there a chashash? When it's 65%. And Chazal calculated that when women or people are taken into captivity, so there's a 65% chance that they were raped, and therefore we don't assume like jail where they did it baratzon, maybe if there's capital punishment. We do assume that they were nensas. Therefore, if you're the wife of a Kohen, you'd be asura. However, this is only merely, the Gemara reiterates many times during this daf, that it's a chashash ba'alma. It's only 65% chance. Now, normally by suffix doraisa, therefore it's a case of suffix. Suffix doraisa, here we're judging whether she was raped by a non-Jew and she's a surah lebala. It's a din doraisa. Suffix doraisa, you go l'chumra. Suffix doraisa is judged l'chumra. But that, according to most poskim, is only the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan decided that suffix doraisa, you go l'chumra. That's the Rabbanan. So therefore, the Rabbanan said that when we're talking about a case of shvuya, where she's taken into captivity, the Gemara says shvuya hikilu. They were lenient over here. Now, what does it mean they were lenient over here? It means they were lenient that they accepted edus that's not normally considered good edus. Edus that's not normally considered good edus. When you have testimony that's not normally considered reliable, right? A kosher aid is a man. A woman's not kosher to be an aid, right? A shifcha, a maidservant, not fully Jewish. An eved, not fully Jewish. They're not considered to be good edim. Here, the Gemara says they relied on eved or shifcha. We rely on Passul Edim over here. What does a Passul Eid help? Do they help at all? But the Gemara says that Aidei Atma, right, the Shvuya herself is not believed if we have Edim that she was Nishbez, unless she was Peshas or Pesheter. So what's the difference between her and someone else? They're both Passul Edim. So I want to distinguish over here that obviously a person is Karav Eitzel Atzmo. Like the Gemara says, Eidecha is Karav Eitzel Atzmo. About themselves, to matter yourself, to ask yourself, you could ask yourself, but to matter yourself, we don't believe. You have negias. You're a biased person. People have biases towards themselves. We're suspecting that they're lying. They don't want to be usher to their husbands. However, when it comes to Eved or Shifcha, even though it's not enough to make an assumption, because for sure it's not proof. Eid Echad, a kosher Eid Echad is not enough for proof. Only 2 Eidim is enough for proof. Sometimes you rely on Eid Echad to create an assumption. So it's Machayev a Shvuya, therefore it's Machayev to make her a Sota in order to mashker a Mesota. It makes an assumption, which is 75%. Right, I would assume a proof is 80%, like 40% alcohol is 80 proof. That's how you know proof, a legitimate proof in Allah has 80% validity. 75% is a chazaka, is an assumption. Here we don't have that assumption. We don't have a kosher eid echad. But the chiddush of this Gemara and all eid echad that are pasul is that as long as you're not nogei b'davar, right? As long as you're an eved or a shivcha and you're pasul eidas, that means we don't have an assumption. We can't rely on your words. However, we can make something called a tliya in halacha. A tliya literally means to hang something. We have something to hang our heads on, right? Meaning, even though it's 65% chance that she was violated, However, we don't know that 35% she wasn't violated. When you come and you're an Eved or a Shifcha, a Passul aid, even though you're not reliable enough to make an assumption that she wasn't violated, you are reliable enough to add 5%. That's the Chiddush of Chazal. Hey, Ma'amru v'Hamamru. Since Savik D'Oraisa L'Chumra is only Din D'Rabbanan, they said you have to be Machmir. So they said, you know what, even Eved v'Shifcha, they do have some validity, right? They're a little suspicious because we don't completely believe them, but they're enough to add another 5%, and therefore, even though it's not good enough for an assumption to matter them, Safik D'Oraisa L'Chumra, however, it's only the Rabbanan, so therefore, Hey Ma'amur v'Hei the Rabbanan said 65% were not willing to be matter, but 70%, another 5%, because of this testimony of an Eved or Shivcha, who are suspicious, and we're not entirely sure, they're not fully Jewish, so therefore they're not so careful in Torah and mitzvos, we'll rely on them a little bit, 5%, and that's why the Gemara, whenever the Gemara relies on a Passul Eid Echad, that's what's basically going on over here. And we learned also at the end of Yevamos, when it comes to Mater and Isha Labala, her husband went to Medina Siyah, we don't know if he died or not, right? The Chazal relied even on a Passul Eid Echad. Now, when it's a kosher Eid Echad, I've explained many times that it's legitimate to rely on them, and there's no penalties if the husband comes back. This I made clear in the Masechtas Yonos. But if you rely on a Passul Eid, so the Passul Eid, since Isha Daiko Mitzvah, there was a Cheskas Isha which was canceled out by the Chazaka, the assumption Daiko Mitzvah, she's going to check into it. So now you have competing Chazakas knocking each other out, you're left with a suffix, a doubt. So a Passul Eid, the Chazal made a Tzliya, and they said, Hey Ma'amru, they said you could rely on Midar Rabbanan. But they also said Midar Rabbanan, if he comes back, this is only the Rabbanan, if he comes back, there's a lot of penalty. That's why the Mishnah on Yevamos pays Zayim and Beis. If the husband does come back, there's so many penalties. But I said that Mishnah only really applies if you're relying on a Passul Eid and a kosher aid, the penalties would not apply. That was my fish and them stuff. So almost, I think it carries true over here. There's a difference between a kosher aid echad, and a Passul Eid echad. One's an assumption, one is a tzliya, one is we can we'll have what to hang our psak on. We have something to base it on, but not an assumption. I hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.